Right, I think we are good to go. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's conference. My name is Ahmad Al-Rashid, so a very warm welcome to everyone. I'll be the host of today's session, so we are truly delighted to have so many wonderful participants to contribute to this important conference, which will kick off the Refugee Week 2021. We'll also celebrate a decade of Swansea City of being a city of sanctuary, and also will form an important step for the Open University application to become a university of sanctuary. Today, we've got a great lineup for many excellent speakers and contributors. So a very warm welcome to all of them. Also, throughout the day, we will be tweeting. So please help us spread the word using the following hashtag, AccessConf. So this is something we will be using throughout the day to spread the word about today's event and the conference. And as I said, please feel free to use the hashtag to spread the word. Now, kind of on a personal note, as a host of today's webinar, the issue being discussed are very, very close to my heart. Being myself a refugee from Syria, I made my physical journey to the UK back in 2015, and my educational journey to graduation at Scots, the University of London in 2016, I experienced firsthand the many obstacles and challenges faced by lots of refugees and asylum seekers and other forced migrants. So I'm confident that with dedication and perseverance, together we can work to help remove those obstacles and open up access to higher education, but also employment to many forced migrants and refugees who are seeking sanctuary here in the United Kingdom. So, as I said, today there will be an opportunity for you to hear, from a wide range of different experts and people who are quite passionate who are working in these fields. And again, I urge you to again raise questions, to make use of the chat function. And as I mentioned, there will be an opportunity always to tweet and also spread the word about today's event using the hashtag AccessConf. So this is Access CONF, AccessConf. Now we're going to head straight into our opening plenary, and the title is A Nation of Sanctuary, putting principles into practice in Wales. And it gives me a great pleasure to introduce a colleague and also a good friend of mine, Thanuja. So I'd like to introduce Thanuja, who has been a truly inspiring activist and contributed so much to Swansea City of Sanctuary and more generally to supporting refugees and asylum seekers. So just kind of a note on the term that we'll be using today. We use the term forced migrants to include both refugees and asylum seekers. So this is just something for you to keep in mind throughout the day. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to my colleague Thanuja. Over to you, Thanuja.
Thank you, Ahmed. Good morning, everybody, and to all our speakers, to all our guests. I welcome you all on behalf of Swansea City of Sanctuary. I'm Thanuja Hettiarachchi. I'm the 10th anniversary celebration coordinator for Swansea City of Sanctuary. City of Sanctuary is all about welcome for everyone, but especially those who are fleeing from war and persecution. We get together with local people, together with refugees, to welcome newcomers. More importantly, we try to promote the idea of welcome. Our vision that everywhere people who are seeking sanctuary go, that they will find people who welcome, understand, and include them. So we try to get together, we try to get mainstream groups, organizations, individuals to pledge support, and then not only to say they will be welcoming, but actively include people and help them overcome barriers. So for today, that especially means colleges and universities, people who do career coaching, businesses and employers, and also policymakers. We are very pleased that this conference is supported by Swansea University, University of Trinity St David's, Gow College, and for the region, which represents a range of businesses and employees in South West Wales, as well as UK City of Sanctuary and Welsh Refugee Coalition. And we are very particularly pleased to be partnered by the Open University. So I thank you all once again for joining us, and I hope you will enjoy the rest of the day. I'm going to pass over to Ahmed now. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Tanu. Thank you for the very warm welcome. Thank you for being, one of the great kind of forces behind organising it, but also all the incredible work they've been doing, to help other people seeking sanctuary. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce Professor Marie Gillespie, who is a professor of sociology at the Open University and the leading the initiative for the Open University to become a University of Sanctuary. So without further ado, over to you, Marie.
Good morning all, and thank you to Ahmed and Tanu. It's really, really wonderful to see so many people here. We have just under 300 guests registered, so thank you for joining us. As Ahmed said, this is our collective contribution to Refugee Week. Now, for those of you who may not be very familiar with it, Refugee Week is a UK-wide festival celebrating the creativity and contributions of refugees to our society. And it's been going for about 23 years. This year's theme is taken from the historic speech by Martin Luther King, the civil rights activist, in 1963, I Have a Dream. And during that speech, he coined this phrase, "We cannot stand alone." And in that historic speech, he argues that whoever we are, it's only when we realise that our destinies and our fates are inextricably interconnected. It's only when we act together in solidarity that we can overcome the kinds of barriers and inequalities that this conference hopes to address today. And so that's why we're really, really pleased to have you all here, and we hope that you will share your experiences and contribute to the report that we are going to write after this conference, which will take practical steps to making sure that some of those barriers are overcome. The planning for this conference began very locally here in Swansea, and Swansea has been my home for nearly 30 years. And I found in Swansea a very warm culture of welcome, as Tanu has said. Like many other people I've met in Swansea, I only intended to stay a couple of years, and 30 years later, I still find myself here. And I think that it is this culture of welcome that Swansea, the people of Swansea, and Swansea City of Sanctuary has helped to nurture over a decade. So the Open University is truly delighted to be your partners, alongside a host of sister community organisations who've done so much over decades to shine a light on the challenges facing asylum seekers and refugees and to offer them support. Of course, these challenges of displacement and settlement for asylum seekers and refugees are particularly acute. And today's the UK government's hostile environment policies don't help those fleeing war and persecution. Arguably, in the past, things might have been easier. History can always teach us lessons. And that's why today we start the conference with a tribute to Heidi Hillman. Heidi was a child refugee from Nazi Austria in 1939, whose family found a home in Britain. Heidi was also a passionate advocate of lifelong learning. She found her academic home at the Open University, where she graduated at the age of 63. And when Heidi died, she left a very generous donation to the Open University to support refugee education. And her donation has made this conference possible today. Therefore, it's my great pleasure to present a film that gives you a glimpse of Heidi's life, Lest We Forget and Never Again.
This conference has been made possible through a donation from my late mother, Heidi Hillman. My name is Josh, and along with my brother Saul and my father Mayor, we're very proud that the donation is being used in this way, and that Heidi's name is associated with the issues being discussed, and more importantly, the exciting ideas for addressing the challenges, which without a doubt will help refugees and asylum seekers in the future. Heidi was a graduate of the Open University. Her passion for the OU and its mission to help bring learning to all, wherever they came from, motivated her donation. She was also a refugee herself. She was born Heidi Krott in Vienna in Austria in 1937. Her family was Jewish and had lived in Vienna for several decades. Her mother Irma's parents ran a well-known konditorei, that's a patisserie, and we have a wonderful picture of Heidi's mother as a little girl at the very beginning of the 20th century, standing in front of it with her parents and baby brother, and another of a cake that Heidi's grandfather baked for Emperor Franz Joseph. Her father, Heinrich, studied and practiced medicine, was in the medical corps in the First World War, and in 1925 qualified as a dental surgeon. The increasing persecution of Jews in Germany and Austria in the 1930s doesn't need to be described here, but for Heidi and her family, the Anschluss in March 1938, when Austria was incorporated into the Reich, and the explosion of violence in November that year, known as Kristallnacht, were horrific watershed moments. Their apartment was confiscated and taken over by a Nazi officer, and the family was taken in by Irma's ex-husband, who was father of Heidi's two elder sisters. Shortly after that, Heinrich escaped, travelling alone via Scandinavia to eventually reach Britain. Heidi's sisters were separately sent ahead to London with the Kindertransport, aged 9 and 6. That left Heidi and her mother, who did not make it out until a few months later in spring 1939. Adolf Eichmann issued their exit permit. A couple of weeks later, he was deporting thousands of Jews to death camps in Poland. The wider family was relatively fortunate in that many survived, but not all did. In London, it was initially a struggle for Heinrich to acquire the credentials to be able to practice in the UK. He had to study dentistry again, but this time in another language, in order to take the necessary professional dental exams. He gradually built up a dental practice. At first, most of his patients were Austrian refugee friends, including several members of the Freud family and many writers, musicians, actors and artists, including his friend Kurt Schwitters, the German painter, a non-Jewish exile and refugee who in payment painted a wonderful portrait of Heidi, aged 6. At the end of the war, the family decided to stay in London and with the help of the Association for Jewish Refugees, worked to secure permanent residence. Heinrich changed his name to Henry, and in 1947 the family were granted British nationality, and shortly after that, Henry became an NHS dentist. Heidi left school at 16 and so did not go to university first time round. She worked as an editor on various journals in construction and architectural design, brought up her 2 sons and became a teaching assistant. But decades later, she signed up at the OU to study humanities with art history, graduating at the age of 63. It was a very proud day for everyone who knew her. Heidi had always been committed to lifelong learning. She was always undertaking a dizzying range of evening classes, courses, workshops in skills and subjects way too long to list. But they included a passion for the technique of collage, a nice link back to Kurt Schwitters, who was a doyen of this technique and no doubt an inspiration. The experience of being an OU student was transformative for Heidi in terms of learning, reading, cultural engagement and confidence. She felt strongly that everyone should have that opportunity to improve their education, to remove barriers to employment. She hated to see talent wasted and had particular empathy and solidarity with those who, like her family, had arrived in this country in adverse circumstances and having to start again. She would have loved to have attended this conference. So on behalf of Heidi and the rest of the family, I'm delighted to open this important conference, which I am sure will help make a difference and improve access to higher education and employment for forced migrants. Our thanks to the Open University and to Swansea City of Sanctuary for organising it. We wish you the very best of luck and will be avidly following the progress of the OU in its ambitions to become a University of Sanctuary.
Well, that was a powerful film and a timely reminder that whether we are talking about child refugees in 1939 or in 2021, that there are lessons to be learned, very striking precedents, precursors, and also parallels. So let's hope those lessons will be learned. I mean, I still think of quite a lot of, similarities between Heidi's experience, seeking sanctuary and fleeing Nazi Austria, and my own experience seeking sanctuary in the UK in 2015. So let's do hope that there will be lessons to be learned. What I'm going to do now, we are going to move on, and now I'd like to introduce the chair of the next session, Alan Thomas. Alan Thomas, a distinguished retired Professor of International Development, a multi-talented activist and tireless advocate of refugee rights, who will be welcoming our plenary of our next plenary. So over to you, Alan.
Thank you very much, Ahmed, and welcome to everybody. I'm the co-chair of Swansea City of Sanctuary. I'd just like to give the apologies of my other co-chair, Amber Esther, who can't be with us today, and she would be another person who could give her history of being stuck in limbo and for 7 years before she got leave to remain, and being unable to use her qualifications, her children not being able to go to university with their peers, and the kind of problem which we're here to try to look for solutions to. So I will go straight on to our 4 speakers, but I'm going to try to be strict and give them only 5 minutes each. And when there's just a half a minute, say, to go, I'm going to wave a yellow card, which I hope you can see. If you have any questions to put to our speakers, please write them in the chat. I think Ahmed already said that, but I'm just reminding you. We won't really see the hands up, because there's so many of you. So write your questions in the chat. Somebody's looking at that, and we'll pick the best questions. I hope we've got time for a few at the end of our 4 speakers. So our first speaker is Jane Hutt. We're very, very pleased indeed to have Jane with us. She is a member of the Senedd, and she is the Welsh Minister of Social Justice. So, Jane, over to you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, Alan. Bore da pawb, good morning, everyone. And I was really pleased to be with you at the start of this really important event today. So thank you to Ahmed, Tani and Mary. It's a really inspiring as well to hear that tribute of Heidi Hillman to start us off today. But it's just such a pleasure to be with you this morning to celebrate as well as to learn, to reflect, to recommit ourselves, but to celebrate 10 years of Swansea being a city of sanctuary, a remarkable achievement in providing a culture of welcome, as Mary said, a warm welcome to those seeking sanctuary within the city and beyond. And as we mark this celebration, the beginning of Refugee Week, it's important to reflect on the contributions of those who seek sanctuary in Swansea and Wales, to value the skills and attributes that they bring to many aspects of Welsh life. And launching the Nation of Sanctuary plan in 2019 was very much an extension of the vision which started in Wales, here in Swansea. The national vision, which I launched, necessarily builds upon the work which local sanctuary groups have demonstrated is possible, and I was delighted that we could continue that ambition. The Nation of Sanctuary means helping anyone who's dispersed or resettled to Wales to access services and integrate with communities from day one of arrival. It's about recognising the person before seeing their immigration status. It's about recognising that individuals come with skills and experiences and not just simply needs to be met. Above all, the Nation of Sanctuary is about a societal approach to making Wales not just welcoming to forced migrants, but also harnessing the opportunities which migration brings to help strengthen our economy and our communities, to help them to thrive. Sometimes UK government rules about supporting those with insecure immigration status make it difficult to always live up to this, but we're continuing to work hard to deliver tangible benefits within our constraints. It's taken longer than anticipated to find a solution to support asylum seekers in Wales to access funds similar to the education maintenance allowance, but we're still exploring options that will not have unintended negative consequences. We've not forgotten or withdrawn our commitment to this proposal. It's taken time, but we will get there, and I spoke to the new Education Minister about this last week. In higher education, it's been extremely pleasing to see universities and colleges in Wales become accredited as places of sanctuary. In fact, I visited universities in Swansea just before the lockdown and heard some really inspiring progress. The Higher Education Funding Council for Wales produced a useful circular earlier this year highlighting good practice across Wales. But we continue to urge the UK government to see sense and allow asylum seekers to the right to work. We support the Lift the Ban campaign. We'll be urging the UK government not to miss the opportunity of the forthcoming Borders Bill to make this change. And this is crucially important as we work with partners in the private, public and third sector this summer to host an employability event for people seeking sanctuary before the end of the year. The last 18 months have been so difficult for everyone. But in addition to the challenges we face, people seeking sanctuary have often been separated from their families, lacking resources, having difficulties understanding public health messaging, lacking access to integration services, and fearing the impact of the virus on those from an ethnic minority background, amongst other challenges. Our sanctuary website has been updated throughout the pandemic to ensure the key messages around COVID-19 regulations can be easily accessed in many languages. And also we've funded Clear Springs Ready Homes to install internet access into asylum homes, properties in Wales for a period of 6 months. This will help to connect with their family and friends and allow access to learning opportunities such as ESOL classes and crucial legal advice. Our Restart project has continued to deliver a holistic approach to increasing language skills and employability outcomes for refugees in Wales. The project has a barriers fund. It's helped to provide devices, access to the internet. It's also welcomed the flexibility of which many.
Minister, you are on mute.
Sorry, I don't know how long that happened, but hope I will keep going. Our regional employment officers have continued to work on helping individuals on the Restart project to obtain employment opportunities. And Nadia Tahar will be joining you this afternoon to give you an insight of his role as an employer engagement officer and as a refugee who has settled in Swansea. And he can give what we feel is the best insight into how our Restart project can help individuals to achieve their potential. But we are working also with businesses, the private sector, to open up opportunities of employment, launching a campaign shortly to encourage businesses to diversify their workplace, provide placement opportunities, reap the benefits of employing refugees, and the Institute of Directors engaged fully with this. But we continue to be successful in supporting refugees to become employed within the NHS in Wales. We strongly believe other sectors could benefit greatly from similar recruitment. And just finally, we're publishing a toolkit for employers to harness the skills of refugees, and that we'll be promoting with businesses. So just very finally, every action we take brings us closer to becoming a nation of sanctuary. Swansea's status as a city of sanctuary contributes to the achievement of these actions, as is this celebration, and I welcome your continued efforts. But as Ahmed has said, we need perseverance and commitment, and you've got that from your Welsh Government, your Minister for Social Justice. Diolch yn fawr.
Many thanks, Jane. As I said, we will take questions after all the 4 speakers, if that's all right. But if you have questions for Jane, please write them in the chat. It's wonderful to hear the commitment from our own minister. Let's go on. The next speaker is from Scotland, which is a sister devolved administration. We would like to have that speaker because we want to learn from what they're doing, see where they're doing better than we are, and perhaps there's something going in another direction as well. Elodie Mignard, she's the a programme manager at the Scottish Refugee Council, and we are hoping that she's going to tell us about the equivalent strategy which they have, which is called the New Scots Refugee Integration Strategy. Elodie, over to you.
Thanks, Alan, and good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting us. I hope I'm going to give you interesting pieces of information, but I'm very delighted to be here today to hear about what's happening in Wales. I think Scotland can learn a lot about what's happening in Wales at the moment, so I'm very pleased to be here today. In the 5 minutes that I have, I will very briefly give you an overview about the New Scots Refugee Integration Strategy, which is the Scotland strategy for refugee integration. New Scots is the term that Scotland has chosen to talk about refugees and asylum seekers, trying to move away from some labels and legal terminology. So the strategy is the commitment of the Scottish Government to show welcome to refugees. It's based on the refugee integration framework of Ager and Strang, 2 academics who developed this framework back in 2004, and it has different action plans and theme groups around health, housing, language, education, employment and welfare rights, and the needs of asylum seekers as well, looking separately at the specific circumstances and legal situation of asylum seekers. Most of those areas, integration areas, are devolved to the Scottish Government, so there is a responsibility there to look at concrete action to improve New Scots circumstances. The strategy prides itself to be a 2-way process, to be rights-based, and to promote integration from day one. This principle of integration from day one is applied in some areas, but not everywhere, if I'm honest with you. In terms of education, for example, it means that people who are still in the asylum process will have access to ESOL as soon as they arrive, but they want to be able to enjoy the full range of education entitlements until they get leave to remain. So to give you a bit of an example of some of the key achievements under the areas of education and employment. Regarding employment, employability programmes are now devolved to Scotland. It's called Fair Start Scotland. And while most people need to wait 6 months to access those employability programme, refugees have been recognised to need this as soon as possible, with no delay, as soon as people get a refugee status. So this is something that they can access. The other big piece of work happening and funded by the Scottish Government, the Scottish Government funds Glasgow Caledonian University to pilot a skills recognition Scotland, which is a programme to try to recognise prior learning and prior qualification of people coming to the UK. And this programme tries to look at not only formal learning, but sometimes more of the informal learning that people may have had, and more vocational qualification that people may have had back in their country. Something else that the strategy focuses on is around supporting refugees on employment by supporting refugees to identify their own goals. But this needs to be done as part of a wider holistic integration planning, because employment is a key priority for everybody. But if people don't have a stable home, if people are still in homelessness accommodation, if people don't have the qualification that they need, if people don't have a stable income, the progress towards employment is not really something feasible. So it needs to be, the employment goals need to be looked at within a wider context. So Scottish Refugee Council last year, we published some toolkits around holistic integration planning and employment action planning that basically meet some of the actions of the strategy. The employment group also decided to give a particular focus on employers' engagement. So similar to some of the things that Minister Jane Hutt mentioned of what will happen in Wales, there's a big focus on employers' engagement, educating employers about employment rights of refugee, documentation that refugees have to show that they have the right to work. Okay, so and it's very important to target different sector and to recognise that refugees will have different types of goals. So it's about looking at different sectors, small SMEs as well as the bigger employers. In terms of education, the strategies look at children education and adult education. There is a bit of challenges here because there is a difference of entitlement between people who are still in their asylum process and people who have leave to remain. So I would say that this is still a piece of work that the Scottish Government need to look at. So it's quite interesting to hear what may be happening here in Wales about this. And I'm going to stop here because if I keep going, I will go over the 5 minutes, but I'm happy to take questions after.
Thank you very much indeed.
Alan, your microphone has gone off.
Okay, thank you, Elodie. I don't know why the microphone wouldn't come on for a moment, but we always have these glitches, don't we? It is, I think the wonderful thing about Wales and Scotland is this from day one principle, and you can do so much with that principle. I think perhaps we could do more sometimes, but it's a great principle to start with. We're going to now go to Alphonsine Kabagabo, and she is the first of our speakers who's a refugee herself, apart from Thanu, who introduced, and Ahmad. And she's the director of Women for Refugee Women. She's a survivor of the Rwandan genocide, and she's an expert on empowerment of women and girls. And her talk is on the importance of welcome for survivors and communities. Alphonsine.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's really a privilege to be here, part of this conference. My speech will really focus on two things: my own story to demonstrate the power of welcoming, but also it's a bit of what we do at Women for Refugee Women as an example of an organization that welcome refugees and asylum seekers. So I would like to start with my story that showed the power of welcome, what you are doing here in Swansea, welcoming people who need protection. I am a survivor of the genocide, as you said, of the Rwanda genocide. I had to flee my home and start again my life. But I was supported to rebuild my life, and that's how I became the person I am today. I will never forget. My daughter was 6 months. We were rescued by a Belgian soldier who hid us in a tank, took us through.
Alphonsine, your camera is frozen. We can't really hear you.
What is frozen?
Sorry, can you repeat the last sentences, because your camera froze and your mic went off?
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I will just continue to say that I was privileged to be rescued and to be brought to safety in Belgium. Life as a refugee in Belgium was not easy, but I can't forget the sense of happiness for being safe. It was not always easy, as I say, because I lost the sense of self-esteem, confidence as a refugee. The social system was not always welcoming, the people not always. As a professional with experience of teaching and leading youth organization in Rwanda, I was told that what I could do is to become a cleaner or live on benefit. We were faced with racism. However, with support from communities, organization, friends, we managed to overcome those hostility. They enabled us to absolutely rebuild our life. For example, I was able to fulfill a career over 20 years working for the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts to fulfill my passion of supporting girls and young women empowerment. Because I was supported to access job, to have education. My daughter was able to go to university in Birmingham. Now she's fulfilling her dream to become a producer. So support is key. Today, I am speaking as the director of Women for Refugee Women because of the support I got to be where I am today. Women for Refugee Women is an organization that supports women to access opportunities, to be empowered, and to have the voice and be part of the solution. We put empowerment of women, refugee women, asylum seekers at the heart of everything we do. Even in this time of lockdown, we are able to support over 300 women who are asylum seekers in London, but also we work with other organizations, similar organizations in England, but also in Wales, in Swansea, and in Cardiff, in our coalition called Sisters Not Strangers. We work with women to support them to navigate this very complicated asylum process. We support them to make sure that they can speak English, they can have the voice to challenge the narrative, change the public's perception about refugees, demonstrate how refugees are not only people who need support, but they can contribute. And in my 6 months, because I've been in this position only for 6 months, I have seen how difficult it is. The hostile environment is so real. The challenges with women, refugees, and others start mainly when they go to claim at the Home Office. Most of the women we support are here because they are fleeing sexual and gender violence, trafficking, exploitation. But when they go to make their claim at the Home Office, the first thing is disbelief. They don't believe their stories. And that's the hardest thing, when you know what you went through and you will meet with people who can't believe you. If they are turned down, their support, their benefit are refused and they became destitute. Our recent report called Will I Ever Be Safe explored the experience of over 100 women who were living completely destitute in the UK. We found that being destitute increased the risk of being vulnerable and being really subject to more abuse. Many women are also locked into detention. And we at Women Refugee Women, we are again fighting the opening of a new detention center, because that's not human to lock women who are so vulnerable in a detention center. We are, as many of you said, we are very concerned about this new, this new immigration bill, the effect it's going to have to the women. We are particularly concerned about the Home Office current proposal that those who arrive by irregular route will never be given permanent settlement in the UK. I know by myself, my experience of fleeing across the borders to be safe. How can you take a safe route when you are fleeing for your life? Sometimes it's not possible. So you are obliged sometimes to go on back of Elodie, to go on a small boat across rivers with all the risks, because you don't have any choice. We must not punish people for the way that they travel to safety. We can't deny them a possibility of rebuilding their life. We have all to work together to make sure we build a sanctuary, welcoming country, not only in Wales, but the whole of UK, to become a sanctuary where someone who is so in need is welcomed, supported to rebuild their life, and become active citizens who are contributing to the change, who are contributing to the safety of the country where they are welcomed. I'm committed with my organization to continue to be the voice of women but other refugees, so they are allowed to rebuild their lives. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much indeed, Alphonsine. It's very inspiring to hear from people with your kind of history. It's quite humbling, actually, for those of us who've had an easier life. Thank you very much indeed. We have now another speaker who's from Swansea itself, who is also a refugee. That's Stepheni Kays, who now works with Hywel University Health Board, and we have chosen her as a speaker partly because she started her journey into employment with us in Swansea City of Sanctuary, with one of our partners here, and partly because she shows how it's possible to get into mainstream employment and to move on. And Stepheni, over to you. We would love to hear your story as well.
Thank you very much, Alan, and thank you so much that you've asked me to talk about my experiences in accessing higher education, but also attaining relevant and meaningful qualifications from those higher education studies, and also going into meaningful employment. And I really put the emphasis on meaningful here because I want to talk about the importance and benefits of support and how it has helped me to succeed in education and in employment. And like Alphonsine was talking, I was thinking, it's really, really important. And we can see that from what she was saying, how empowering and important support is. I have learned from my own experience in kind of like really working with others to support them on their journey of seeking sanctuary, that support has to be person-centered. It has to be driven by the person. It has to take into consideration and acknowledge people's experiences because they're so diverse and they differ, people's skills, but also acknowledge challenges, be honest and truthful about the structural barriers that exist to manage expectations, and essentially empower people to be able to navigate around those barriers to rebuild their lives and reach their purpose. I arrived in Wales on Guy Fawkes Night. There was a celebration in the air, which was good, but that only lasted for a minute because reality sets in about the uncertainty that lay ahead. However, I can say for sure that in the 12 years I've been in Wales, I can see how important support has been for me at every point and at every turn. Support really started for me with the Welsh Refugee Council and the British Red Cross at Links House in Cardiff. But the support that I received from my support worker when I was sent to Swansea was really what set off my higher education journey and my employment journey. After the initial kind of like support of kind of like knowing the basic necessities such as bus times and where the shops were and all those lovely things, we started to have conversations and put together a plan for me as to how I was going to kind of like try and rebuild my life. Those conversations resulted in my support worker really giving me two pieces of information. I kind of like look at it as tools. One would eventually lead to me attaining higher education qualifications, and the other one would lead me into meaningful employment. And I would keep saying meaningful employment because as Alphonsine mentioned, you know, there's sometimes that expectation that, you know, because you're seeking sanctuary, that you should be a cleaner or work in a factory, that, you know, that there's nothing else available. So my support worker gave me an application form to the Oxfam advocacy group for women, and I'll talk about that. And then he gave me details to the Careers Wales in Swansea. So the Oxfam Advocacy Group for Women application form, that led to really me connecting with other women who were in the same position as me and making those connections, which are really, really important. But it also gave me an opportunity to learn about Wales, the life in Wales, socially, politically, understand a little bit more about the asylum system. But out of that advocacy group, I met a lady who would months later sent me information about a foundation program that the Department for Adults Continuing Education in Swansea University was offering in my local community, in a community centre. But the appointment with Careers Wales led to me having an appointment with the volunteer centre at the Swansea Council for Voluntary Services, or SCVS, and not me knowing that years later I would actually be working there. So I joined the foundation program, and that was really helpful because the lecturers, they were really supportive. They took into consideration that we were adults returning to education. It took into consideration that we had other commitments. It specifically took into consideration me as a human being, that I haven't really been in the country for a long time. I hadn't had the British education, so I needed a little bit more time to catch up with my colleagues in the class. And that really built my confidence. It gave me the skills. And when the offer came up to do a part-time degree with that same department in Swansea University, I was confident enough and empowered enough because of the support that I received from my tutors and everybody, the staff at the Department of Adults Continuing Education, to proceed to the undergrad degree. So while I was doing that undergrad degree, my appointment with the Volunteer Centre at SCVS, that led to me volunteering at the Citizens Advice Bureau. And again, while I was volunteering there, the support was really imperative. It was good. It gave me the skills. I was offered training. I could go to my supervisor even 50 times if I didn't understand anything, which was really, really helpful. And going back to education, I finished my undergrad and really feeling empowered and confident, my esteem really up. I went on to do a master's degree. But while I was doing my undergrad degree, I really connected with Swansea City of Sanctuary when I started volunteering with them as a mentor, mentoring other asylum seekers who had just come like me, trying to give them a little bit of hope, supporting them, because support is really essential. And like everybody's been saying, it has to start from when people arrive. Oh gosh, my time is almost over. Yeah, but I've been able to continue. I've been able to work for Public Health Wales. I work for Howell University Health Board, but I have to say it's really just because of the support that I've received. And really, we need to provide support that dignified, that's respectful, that takes people's humanity into consideration, and services and organizations and public bodies have to take that into consideration and provide services that are delivered in a way that take those aspects into consideration. Dear Honval, thank you very much.
Stephanie, thank you very much. I was very sorry to have to stop you because I thought we were really enjoying what you were telling us about the importance of support. Now, I'm not sure whether how much time we have for questions because a couple of glitches, we're a little bit over time. Yeah. Can we take a couple of questions?
I think being the host of the session, we've got a really packed day. I have to say, sorry, there won't be time for the question. We have to bypass the question for this session, but thank you everyone for questions. We will bear all these in mind as we write our report so nothing gets lost because we've got other speakers and we've got a packed day. So thank you very much everyone for your questions. Also, I'd like to thank you Alan very much for chairing this, as well as all your brilliant speakers. So many insights, so many really brilliant and useful insights, and a compelling start to the day.